Hey, it's Matt here at Mad Muse Studios, and we're showing Sweetwater the studio. My main vision when I built this studio was to have like a big bedroom. Our last space that we built, which is more of a production room where you had the traditional control room and production, or vocal booth, and everyone was either wanting to hide themselves away in like the vocal booth and not be seen and being very like private, or they wanted to be next to me in the control room next to the console and kind of communicate like they were used to, everyone's writing in bedrooms now, and that's great, right? You're getting like all these songs coming out. But then if you come into these studios of old, right, you go into East West and suddenly the artist shrinks, because they're not used to hanging in those vibes. In the old days, you had, session players were going from studio to studio, 3 hours here, 3 hours here, and that was their office. Right? Now, like the modern musician, their office is their bedroom or their side, their office of their home, right? And so I wanted a space where everyone felt like they were collaborative together, just hanging out. But obviously that's an issue when you think about acoustically, like if you're coming to a studio, everything has to sound better, right? There's a reason you're here and not at home. And so obviously there was some thinking that had to go into that to figure out like, how do we make it feel like a really big bedroom and actually function as a top-tier recording studio. Going into it was, how do we combine being a comfortable space for musicians to work, but also be at the forefront of like technical excellence. It's interesting when there's glass separating the control room and the live room. When you're the producer, you're the engineer, you're on that side of the glass. You don't think about the glass. But the second you move around the room and you're helping cut a vocal or you're cutting instruments, you realize what a hindrance that glass is. So when you take down that glass, it's like taking down a wall, literally, right? And the communication between everyone in the room, the production staff, the musicians, it just becomes effortless. Removing that glass, everyone's involved. It's just everyone's working together to create this piece of art. We have all our drums here. As you can see, pretty nice collection of snare drums. I'm not a drummer, but I appreciate the sound of drums and what they do to a record. Lots of guys play with samples, and you go into the hip hop world and the samples change the whole feel. I feel like it's the same thing in the rock world. And I'd rather capture that live on the floor rather than having to rely on a sample. So we have lots of different snare drums, from wood, brass, steel. They all have a different character, different sound, and they're right here to pull in. To go with the snares, we also have 3 different drum sets, a 64 Ludwig, an 80s Gretsch kit with the famous Jasper shells that everyone loves, and a newer Sugar percussion. So between that and the snares and a whole bevy of cymbals, we kind of have all our different drum sounds covered. Lastly, we come over here and we tend to like throw the bass player over in this corner, gives them like the most access to the drums. Kind of built in like a seating area for everyone, like to maintain like kind of like a hang vibe. I like, for my sessions, I like it relaxed, just a bunch of people having fun making music. It's already stressful enough when you put in the technical elements, but if everyone can kind of just hang out and they feel relaxed, they come into the space and it's like a lounge, I feel like you end up with better tracks. I think if like we're talking about gear and there's one thing that I truly can't live without, it'd be the ATC speakers, because 1, you have no speakers, you have no music, but 2, you just get so used to listening to something. I was an NS10 guy forever, where I didn't care about anything else but NS10s. There's just like a focused mid-range there, and that became a thing. And I had, when we first got the ATCs from Sweetwater, I still had the NS10s up. And I realized that the ATCs were giving me all the information I needed from the NS10s, but then more. And it wasn't a more as in a distracting more. And I just took them down, and I've just been rolling with those ATCs for now a couple years. And they're the one things where I can plug, technically a laptop into them and still work. The mid-range is just so revealing, as much so as the NS10s, but like, as in, I'm shooting in a higher resolution almost. I'm seeing it in the music in a higher resolution. Centerpiece of the studio is our console. When we first built the space, we had brought over our SSL G+, and it was in our production mix room before that, and it just never really felt right in this space with tracking. We had a lot of these Cappy preamps that we had in outboard racks on the side, and when you're doing tracking, it's like it kind of sucks to have to go to the outboard rack and then go back, and it's a lot of back and forth, and there's a reason why there's consoles in classic rooms and they work for, it's the thing. So we sort of reimagined what it would be like to utilize our favorite preamps, EQs, and still have control digitally right in front of us. So we built, we kind of spent about 2 months with CAD designs and figuring out what do mastering consoles sound like, right? You have these reflections, and how do you maximize ergonomics but also acoustics? And this is what we came up with. So we have 32 channels of the Cappy preamps and EQs. We have 8 channels of tube Pultecs and 4 channels of the Neve 1073. And I like to have when I'm tracking vocals, my compressors right in front of me, because there's so much dynamic that can happen in a vocal performance. Sometimes you like to ride the threshold or the gain going into the compressor. So I have my favorite 3 vocal compressors right in front of me. The TubeTech CL1B, an LA2A, and a TLA100. So depending on what we're doing, I kind of know the sound in my head, what I'd like to patch into, and everything's right in front of me. So when we're cutting vocals, you can have just total concentration on getting that done. And then we move over here, and we've got the Burl A to D's, D to A for our tracking system. So it's 36 channels in, and only 4 channels going out that goes into our monitor controller. So again, this is primarily what we use as our tracking room. Rack of compressors. So I see a lot of tube stuff here. I love the 176s on guitars. Distressors are on drums. Tube core down there I love on acoustic instruments. The 124s can go pretty much anywhere. They're like a chameleon, right? Same thing with the Unfair Child. And then here's just more drum stuff. So different parts of the room, I'll put room mics, whether we're doing drums or guitars. And these compressors all have really unique release envelopes, and they can bring out different parts of the room. So depending on what I'm going for, would be either the Compex, the Neve, or the Chandler TG1. For better or for worse, I'm not the guy that ends up ordering all this equipment in the studio. That falls to our studio manager, Zolma. And she just gets fed up with technical stuff real quick, right? I'm the technical guy. And the one thing Zolma loves about Sweetwater is she can give Mike a call, and it's super easy. And if I forgot something, or he's gonna come pick up, all the little pieces and make sure whatever we're getting is delivered on time for the project we need, and is exactly what we'll need to integrate with every other piece of this equipment. So, on a business level, Sweetwater makes it really easy to integrate the gear we need into the studio. So vocalists really fall into 2 camps. It's those that want to have the booth and those that hate vocal booths. And you end up with that 50-50 split where you have the very, pro booth artists come in, and they initially look around the space and they're like, am I gonna sound like I just have reverb in the mic? They just assume, right? You do your best to assure them. But once they get recording, they hear what's coming back, and their voice is so isolated because they're not getting all those early reflections that they're used to. I think then it's like they can just appreciate the space and being alone in it, and it's a whole nother animal in their performance that comes out. So this is where we cut vocals. Every once in a while we'll throw it in another space, but this space has really been designed to have a vocalist in it. It's cozy. We'll set up some chairs sometimes if it's gonna be a longer session, but again, we're throwing into the room, and normally you think about a vocal booth and there's a wall there and you have these early reflections. Here, you don't have that issue. You're kind of throwing out into the room, and again, it's just trying to utilize a very large space in unique ways. So, simple vocal booth, cool mic, it works. So the projects I'm most looking forward to now in the future, again, is bringing musicians back. I love bringing musicians that haven't worked together before, and especially with artists where you can, if an artist is, let's say, traditionally a pop artist, and then I can merge in these musicians that they never were outside of their circle. bringing all those people together, and this is the space to do it in, where everyone's together, it's collaborative. It's not like, oh, what's this guy gonna do to my music? What's this drummer gonna do? I don't, everyone feels like they're working on it together, and I'm looking forward to doing more and more of that as the year progresses. This has been Mad Muse Studios. Thanks for checking us out. You can find a link to our website in the description, and come by and say hi.